Duke Arthur Whittaker had spent his entire adult life building walls around his heart, his past, even his very identity. At 32, he moved through the halls of his grand Mayfair mansion like a man untouched by time or emotion, a figure of cold precision and impeccable control. His mornings were a ritual of power and order, ascending marble staircases, adjusting cravats, scanning the day's schedule with a mind honed to command. Nothing was left to chance. Nothing, except the ghosts he had buried long ago. That December morning in 1823, as sunlight filtered through the tall windows and dust motes danced across the polished floors, Arthur's world fractured in a moment so small it seemed impossible. A silver ring, modest and worn, gleamed faintly on the hand of the newest servant. It was simple, a tiny engraved rose, but it carried the weight of a memory he had spent years trying to forget. A promise made 16 years ago in the dim dormitory of a workhouse, between two children who clung to hope like a lifeline. Arthur froze, each breath catching as recognition struck him like a lightning bolt. The girl he had once sworn to find again, Lily, was standing there, head bowed in customary deference, yet impossibly present, impossibly real. The Duke who had mastered society, politics, and reputation suddenly felt like that frightened, hungry boy once more, heart pounding with the desperate desire to keep a vow made in innocence. His butler's voice cut through the tension, formal and measured. "Good morning, Your Grace. Your correspondence awaits, and Lady Peaton has sent another invitation for her Christmas ball." "Declined," Arthur said without looking up, his tone as controlled as always. "I have no interest in Lady Peaton's schemes." "Very well, Your Grace. The new staff have also arrived for inspection," Harrison continued, unaware that Arthur's attention was fixed entirely elsewhere. The mundane details of household management, kitchen staff approvals, holiday preparations, suddenly seemed trivial, eclipsed by a single, perfect memory brought vividly to life. As he walked the gleaming corridors, lined with portraits and gleaming furniture, he felt the divide between who he had become and who he once was. The servants' hall was alive with nervous anticipation, a dozen new faces standing straight and silent, but his eyes found only her. The young woman at the end of the line, humble in her black dress and white apron, revealed nothing remarkable, except the ring. The silver band with the engraved rose, tarnished but unmistakable, transported him instantly back to a childhood of shared dreams, whispered promises, and the unshakable belief that one day, they would find each other again. And in that moment, Duke Arthur Whittaker, master of estates and confidant of kings, was no longer untouchable. He was just a boy with a promise, staring at the girl who had waited for him all these years. Arthur Whittaker felt as though the ground had shifted beneath him. The polished floors of his Mayfair mansion, the gleaming chandeliers, the quiet murmur of servants, all of it faded into the background as memories he had long buried surged to the surface. A small voice, trembling yet insistent, echoed in his mind, "Promise me, Arthur. Promise me that when you're famous and powerful, you won't forget me," the child had said. "I promise, Lily," his younger self had vowed, voice cracking with the weight of hunger, cold, and fear. "I promise I'll find you. I promise we'll never be alone or afraid again." Reality intruded with Harrison's careful tone, distant yet grounding. "Your Grace, are you quite well?" Arthur realized he had been staring far too long at the scullery maid. Her head lifted just slightly, revealing a flash of green eyes, eyes he knew as well as his own, before they dropped again. His throat tightened, and his hands trembled in ways he hadn't felt in years. "What is your name?" His words came rougher than intended. "Lily Carter, Your Grace," she replied softly. Her voice, matured yet unmistakable, struck him anew. "Lily," he whispered, almost to himself, and saw her tense at the sound. "Lily Carter?" he asked again, more deliberately. "Yes, Your Grace," she answered, her tone steady. The servants around them shifted uneasily. They were unused to seeing their master speak with such emotion, let alone pause over a single servant with such intensity. "And, where did you work before this?" Arthur asked, striving to maintain some semblance of control. "Various households in Yorkshire, Your Grace. Most recently with the Thornton family." Yorkshire. The name hit him like a hammer. The same region where the workhouse had shaped his childhood, where hunger and hope had entwined in those long, bitter years. Arthur forced himself to regain composure, to step back into the cool mask of the Duke, but every glance at her, every glimpse of that silver ring with its engraved rose, drew him deeper into the past he thought he had buried. "Harrison," he finally managed, voice tight. "Ensure the new staff are settled. I'll review their duties later." Without another word, he strode from the room, leaving behind baffled servants and a butler who had never witnessed his master so shaken. Once inside the sanctuary of his study, he sank into the leather chair and buried his face in his hands. Lily. After all these years, she was here, alive, and wearing the ring he had painstakingly saved for, the ring he had promised her when they were children scraping by in the harsh corridors of the workhouse. The memory of that boy, the boy who had scrimped, saved, and dreamed against impossible odds, clashed violently with the Duke he had become. Overnight, life had transformed him, from orphan scraping for survival to Duke of Ravenshollow, one of the wealthiest men in England. He had searched for her, sent inquiries, sent letters, but she had vanished. The workhouse had closed, and with it, his hope. He had resigned himself to the cruel notion that she was lost to the world, a casualty of its relentless hardships. And yet, here she was. A soft knock at the study door pulled him back. "Enter," he called, hastily regaining control. Harrison stepped in, composed as ever. "Your Grace, I've assigned the new maid, Carter, to the scullery as planned. If you have concerns about her placement." Arthur waved him off quickly, his mind still reeling. "No. That will be fine. Carry on." "Very good, Your Grace," Harrison replied, bowing and retreating, leaving Arthur alone with memories, promises, and the impossible reality of seeing Lily again. Arthur felt the weight of every carefully measured step he had taken in life pressing down on him. Harrison's voice floated in from the doorway, cautious and probing. "Your Grace, if I may say, you seem unsettled. Perhaps a physician should be sent?" "I'm fine," Arthur replied sharply, his tone closing the conversation. "Just fatigued. The house party preparations have been demanding." "Of course, Your Grace," Harrison said, retreating, leaving Arthur alone with the silence of his study. He sank into the leather chair, gazing out at the manicured garden stretching endlessly from the mansion. Every aspect of his life had been sculpted with precision, the order, the control, the illusion of invulnerability. And now Lily, simple, real, unforgettable, was in the house, her presence threatening to unravel all of it. The question that clawed at him was painfully clear: what was he going to do? For 3 days, Arthur avoided direct contact with her, though he couldn't ignore the constant awareness of her presence. She moved through the corridors with practiced invisibility, head bowed, hands steady, completing her duties without drawing attention. Yet each fleeting glimpse tore at the careful armor he had built around himself. By the 4th morning, he could resist no longer. As Harrison brought his tea, Arthur's voice cut through the quiet. "Harrison, I need to speak with the new scullery maid. Have her come to my study in an hour." Harrison raised an eyebrow. Such a request was unprecedented, but he didn't question it. "Of course, Your Grace. Shall I remain present during the conversation?" "No," Arthur said firmly. "That won't be necessary." The hour that followed stretched endlessly. He paced the study like a caged man, rehearsing words that might bridge 16 years, a lifetime, and a promise made in childhood. How could a duke speak to a servant about a vow once whispered between 2 starving children? How could the past find its voice in the present? At last, a soft knock came. Arthur's heart thudded violently. "Enter," he called, steadying his voice. Lily stepped in, immediately bowing in a deep curtsy, eyes fixed on the floor. "You wish to see me, Your Grace?" "Yes," Arthur said, though words failed him. She seemed impossibly small in the vast study, yet there was a quiet resilience in her posture, a strength he remembered vividly from their shared childhood hardships. "Please," he managed finally, "sit down." Her head lifted in surprise, green eyes meeting his for the first time since their hall encounter. "Your Grace, I couldn't possibly." "Sit down, Lily," he interrupted gently, using her name deliberately. "We need to speak." After a moment's hesitation, she perched at the edge of a chair, hands folded in her lap, posture rigid with propriety. Arthur noticed her fingers subtly turned the silver ring inward, hiding the engraved rose from view. "You recognize me," he said softly, the words more a statement than a question. Lily was silent for a long moment. Then, finally, "Yes, Your Grace. I recognized you the instant I saw you, though, clearly, much has changed." "As have you," Arthur observed, studying the lines etched by years of labor and endurance. "I searched for you, Lily. When I inherited the title, when I finally had the means to help, I tried to find you. But the workhouse had closed, and no one knew where you had gone." He let the silence settle, thick and heavy, as though the room itself were holding its breath. The walls of the study, once a sanctuary of order and control, now felt like a fragile cage, threatening to crumble under the weight of 16 years of memory and longing. "I know," Lily said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I heard about your rise, everyone in the workhouse spoke of it. Little Arthur Whittaker, who shared his bread with the others, had become a duke." Arthur's chest tightened. "Then why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you let me know you were alive?" Lily's laugh was quiet, bitter. "Contact you, a duke? Your Grace, I may have been a child when you left, but I wasn't foolish. I understood even then, your new life would leave no room for the old." "That's not true," he said, voice hard. "I made you a promise, Lily. I gave you that ring. It was a symbol, a vow I meant to keep." You were a boy, she replied gently but firmly. A frightened, desperate boy who thought he could change the world with a few good intentions. We were children. Children who said things we didn't fully understand. Arthur's voice dropped, raw with emotion. Don't call me your Grace. Not you. Never you. She studied him with a mixture of pity and understanding. But that's what you are now, isn't it? The Duke of Ravenshollow, one of the most powerful men in England. And I'm a scullery maid. The gulf between us, it's real. Is it? He asked, stepping closer, his eyes locked on hers. Is it really? Yes, she said firmly, though he noticed the tremor in her hands. Even if it weren't, even if we could somehow bridge it, what then? Society wouldn't allow it. Your peers wouldn't accept me. Could I ever belong in your world? Arthur stayed silent for a moment, confronting the truth she spoke, yet unwilling to let it define him. I don't care about society, he said finally. Don't you? Then why remain unmarried, she challenged. 32 years old, wealth, title, looks, and still a bachelor. Why? The question struck him harder than any blow. Because he had never allowed himself to admit the truth, no other woman had ever compared to the memory of Lily, the girl who had shared her meager rations, who had comforted him in the dark, who had been his anchor when the world was cruel. Because I was waiting for you, he said quietly. Her composure cracked, and tears slid down her cheeks. Arthur, she whispered, speaking his name for the first time that day. You can't say that, she murmured. I mean it, he replied, kneeling before her, taking her roughened hands in his. Every single day for 16 years, I've meant it. This is madness, she said, though she made no move to pull away. You are my only promise, he said. Everything else, titles, wealth, obligations, are just noise. And love? Lily's voice was soft, questioning. Promises and vows are one thing, Arthur. But what about love? Do you love me, or the memory of who we once were? Arthur swallowed hard, the honesty leaving him vulnerable. I don't know, he admitted. I've thought of you every day since the workhouse. No one else has ever made me feel the way you did. But you're right, we're not the same people. We're strangers now. Yes, she said sadly. Then let's start over, he said impulsively. Let's see if the bond we shared as children can grow into something real, something that belongs to the present, not just the past. Her eyes glistened, a mixture of hope and caution, as if the impossible might yet be possible. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Arthur felt the rigid walls of his world give way, not with defeat, but with the fragile, exhilarating possibility of love reborn. How are we supposed to do this as adults? Lily asked quietly, her fingers twisting the silver ring in her lap. I'm a servant in your house. We can't exactly. Meet me tonight, Arthur interrupted, voice low but firm. After everyone's asleep, in the conservatory. We'll talk. Really talk, like we used to as children. Lily's eyes widened. If we're caught? I know every corner of this house, every servant's schedule, he assured her. We'll be safe. She studied him, green eyes flickering with a wariness he remembered well. Finally, she nodded. One conversation, she said. After that, you have to let me go. No matter what. Arthur hesitated, but in his heart, he knew letting her go was no longer an option. If that's what you want, he said, though privately, he had no intention of releasing her. The day passed in a haze. Arthur moved through correspondence, household matters, and planning for the house party, but every thought returned to the evening ahead. When night fell and the house finally quieted, he made his way to the conservatory. Moonlight spilled through the glass walls, casting silver shadows over exotic plants and flowering vines. The room smelled faintly of jasmine and earth, a sanctuary removed from the rigid structure of his estate. She appeared like a ghost in the doorway, dressed simply in grey, the change from her uniform transforming her into the girl he had. Hello, Lily, he replied, voice catching in a way it hadn't in years. For a moment, they were children again, seeking solace in each other amid a world that had offered them little kindness. They settled onto a bench surrounded by moonlit blossoms, the air thick with unspoken questions. Tell me, Arthur began gently, what happened to you after I left? How did you survive? Lily's eyes softened, but the tension of years lingered. After you left, everything changed, she said. The workhouse, the other children looked at me differently. Some were jealous, some hopeful that you'd return, and some, cruel. Arthur felt the sting of guilt. I'm sorry. I never considered how hard it must have been for you. You had your own life changing overnight, she said. I can't imagine how overwhelming that must have been. He nodded and urged her to continue. Tell me everything. I need to know. She paused, twisting the silver ring once more. I stayed at the workhouse until I was 18. Conditions worsened after you left, less funding, harsher overseers, but I survived. I learned to read and write better, cared for the younger children, and kept your memory alive through stories about the boy who would come back to save us. Then, when I was turned out with nothing but my clothes and this ring, I found work in a tavern in York. Hard, cruel work, but better than the streets." Arthur's hands clenched. "Go on." "For 2 years, I saved every penny I could," she continued. "Then I found a position with the Thorntons in Leeds, merchants needing a maid who could read and write. Mrs. Thornton was strict, but she taught me household management, society, even fashion. I worked my way up from scullery maid to lady's maid. I thought maybe I could make something of myself, even open a shop someday." "And what changed?" he asked, though he feared the answer. Her expression darkened. "Mr. Thornton's son came home from university. He pursued me, and when I refused, he told lies about me to his parents. I was dismissed, without references, without pay for my last month." Arthur's jaw tightened. "The bastard." "Language, Your Grace," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips, reminiscent of the girl who had once scolded him for cursing. "Don't," he said softly. "Not with me. Don't hide behind titles." She studied him, and after a long pause, said, "It's a habit, 16 years of keeping my head down, staying in my place, keeping my thoughts to myself. It's hard to set aside." "I know," Arthur admitted. "I've spent 16 years doing the same thing, building walls, keeping everyone at a distance, never letting anyone see the real me." "And who is the real you?" Lily asked, curious. He looked at her, moonlight catching the sharp angles of his face. "I don't know anymore," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Arthur leaned back slightly, letting the weight of her words sink in. "I've been the Duke of Raven's Hollow for so long," he admitted, voice low, "that I've forgotten who Arthur Whittaker really is. But when I'm with you, when I look at you, I remember pieces of him." Lily studied him carefully. "Tell me about your life. What was it like, suddenly becoming a duke?" He gave a humorless laugh. "Terrifying. Overwhelming. Lonely. One day I was scrubbing floors and sharing bread with the other children. The next, I was living in a mansion, attended by servants, tutored, advised, told how to behave, how to think. But no one could teach me how to belong. I never felt like I did." "Never?" she asked softly. "Never," he said firmly. "I was always waiting for someone to discover I didn't deserve it, that I was a fraud. I learned to mimic the aristocracy, to speak their language, to think their thoughts. But inside, I was still the frightened boy from the workhouse." "And now," she pressed. "Now," he said quietly, "I'm a man who's forgotten how to feel anything real, until I saw you again. Until I remembered what it meant to care for someone more than myself." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the faint rustle of leaves beyond the conservatory. Finally, Lily spoke again. "Arthur, what do you want from me?" "Really?" he asked, meeting her gaze. "I want to keep the promise I made to you. I want to marry you, to care for you, to give you the life you deserve. But, do you want me? Not the memory of me, not the obligation, but me, as I am now." Her eyes searched his in the moonlight. She was no longer the child he remembered. Life had etched lines of hardship around her eyes, calloused her hands, and hardened her spirit, but it had also forged resilience, strength, and quiet dignity. "Yes," he said simply. "I want you, the woman you've become, not just the girl from the past. You've earned everything you have through your own efforts. You've survived what would have broken lesser people. You are more admirable than any pampered society lady I've ever met." Her eyes glistened. "Arthur, you can't mean that. You can't throw away everything you've built for a childhood promise." "I'm not throwing anything away," he said firmly. "I'm claiming what's always been mine. And if society rejects us, if your peers turn their backs, if we lose standing, position, or friends, I will have you. That will be enough." Lily hesitated, the familiar battle in her green eyes. "You're not thinking clearly. Nostalgia, guilt, some romantic notion from childhood, marriage isn't a fairy tale. You need a wife who fits your world, someone who can help you, who can be an asset." "I need someone who understands me," he countered. "And you are the only one who ever has." "I knew you as a boy," she said sadly. "I don't know the man you've become, and you don't know the woman I am now." "Then let's learn," he said urgently. "Give us a chance. Let me show you that what we had as children can grow into something real, lasting, as adults." "How?" she asked, skeptical. "How can this possibly work?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know I have to try. 16 years of being the perfect duke, following rules, meeting expectations, living for everyone else. I've never done anything for myself. Now, I choose love over duty, heart over head. And if we fail, if it ruins us, then at least we tried," he finished softly. "At least we didn't let fear choose for us." Lily looked long at the moonlit garden beyond the conservatory walls before turning back to him. "If we do this," she said slowly, "it has to be real. Not charity, not guilt. Between equals." We choose each other freely. Yes, he agreed immediately. And gradual, she added. We need time to see if this is real or just the echo of childhood affection. How long, he asked. Months, perhaps, she said. And I remain a servant in your household. No special treatment. No favoritism. If anyone discovers us, it could ruin everything. Arthur took a deep breath, absorbing the terms she set. For the first time in 16 years, the future was uncertain, and entirely, wonderfully, his to claim. Agreed, Arthur said, though the thought of watching her work in the servants' quarters while he lived in luxury made his stomach churn. And Arthur, Lily said, her tone firm now, if at any point you realize this is a mistake, if you meet someone more suitable, if duty proves stronger than this promise, you have to tell me. You can't let me hope for something that will never happen. That won't happen, he said firmly. Promise me, she insisted. I promise, he said, taking her hands in his. But I need a promise from you as well. What? Promise me you'll give this a real chance. Promise me you won't let fear or social expectations make you run before we've truly had the time to see what we could be together. Lily looked down at their hands, his soft, manicured fingers intertwined with hers, roughened by years of labor. I promise, she said softly. As they left the conservatory, returning to their separate worlds, he to his ducal chambers, she to the servants' quarters, Arthur felt a mixture of hope and terror unlike anything since childhood. He was gambling everything he had built for a chance at something real. And yet, as he watched her fade into the shadows, moving with the practiced invisibility of a servant, he knew he would risk it all again for the promise that had shaped his life. The Christmas house party loomed in a week, and Whitaker House buzzed with activity. Arthur's mind was torn between his responsibilities and his desperate longing for Lily. They had managed 3 more secret meetings in the conservatory, each revealing layers of the adults they had become. You're distracted, his secretary, Mr. Peaton, remarked as Arthur reviewed the guest list for the 3rd time without actually reading it. Is something troubling you about the arrangements? No, Arthur replied quickly, forcing his attention to the papers. Everything appears in order. But nothing was in order. His world of control was spinning into chaos. Every glimpse of Lily in the corridors, every moment he saw her carrying water or scrubbing floors, made him ache to throw aside all pretense and claim her publicly. Your Grace, Harrison appeared in the doorway. Lady Peaton has arrived early for the house party. She requests an immediate audience. Arthur suppressed a groan. Lady Peaton, society's most formidable hostess and matchmaker, had been attempting to arrange his marriage for years. An early arrival could only mean another potential bride. Show her to the blue drawing room, Arthur said with resignation. I'll be there presently. Lady Peaton was a commanding presence, steel grey hair framing sharp eyes that missed nothing. She rose gracefully as Arthur entered, accompanied by a young woman he did not recognize. Arthur, darling, Lady Peaton said, offering her cheek. How wonderful to see you. You look more alive somehow. Thank you, Lady Peaton, he replied carefully, masking his inner turmoil. I want you to meet someone very special, she continued, drawing the young woman forward. This is Lady Charlotte Fairfax, daughter of the Earl of Westbourne. Lady Charlotte was the picture of aristocratic perfection, blonde, blue-eyed, porcelain skin, every movement meticulously trained. Your Grace, she said in a melodious voice, curtsying deeply. Lady Charlotte, Arthur replied with practiced politeness, though his mind wandered elsewhere. Charlotte has just returned from finishing school in Paris, Lady Peaton continued proudly. She speaks 4 languages, plays the pianoforte exquisitely, and paints beautiful watercolors. She would make a perfect wife. Arthur forced a smile. I'm sure she would. But his thoughts were not with Charlotte. They were with Lily. She had no knowledge of languages, no musical training, hands too rough for delicate painting, but she had survived trials that would have crushed most. She had strength, resilience, and a character that no finishing school could teach. Lady Peaton clapped her hands. I was hoping Charlotte might stay for the house party, so you might become better acquainted. Of course, Arthur said, though inwardly he felt as if he were suffocating. Lady Charlotte is welcome to stay. Charlotte curtsied again. Your Grace, might I see your gardens tomorrow? I've heard they're magnificent. Certainly, Arthur replied, though the thought of wandering through the gardens with anyone but Lily filled him with dread. His heart belonged elsewhere, and every polite smile, every courteous word he exchanged with Lady Charlotte reminded him of the dangerous game he was playing, and the impossible choice between duty, society, and the one woman he had never stopped loving. Arthur sank into a chair in his chambers, rubbing his face with his hands. How was he supposed to navigate this? How could he entertain Lady Charlotte's charms, smile politely at her accomplishments, while every thought, every heartbeat, belonged to Lily? The contrast between the life he was expected to lead and the one his heart craved felt unbearable. Later, as he adjusted his cravat for dinner, he caught sight of Lily in the corridor. She moved with quiet efficiency, carrying fresh linens, head bowed as always, shoulders tense. She had heard of Lady Charlotte's arrival. Of course she had, servants always knew everything that happened in the house. Dinner was a trial of restraint. Arthur sat between Lady Charlotte and the Countess of Malbras, exchanging polite conversation while his mind wandered entirely to the woman scrubbing in the kitchens below. Lady Charlotte was everything society deemed perfect, graceful, intelligent, cultured. Yet every smile she offered him felt like a knife twisting in his chest, a reminder of the promise he had made 16 years ago. "Your Grace seems preoccupied this evening," Lady Charlotte said gently. "I hope I haven't said anything amiss." "Not at all," Arthur assured her, forcing a steady tone. "I'm simply tired from the preparations." "Managing such a large household must be exhausting," she said, sympathetic. "Though I imagine you have excellent servants to ease the burden." "Yes," he said, voice tight. "Excellent servants." Once the meal ended and the guests retired for cards and conversation, Arthur excused himself. He navigated the corridors until he reached the scullery. There she was, Lily, up to her elbows in soapy water, scrubbing dishes with meticulous care. "Lily," he said softly. She looked up, startled. "Your Grace," she said quickly, glancing around. "You shouldn't be here." "I needed to see you," he said urgently. "I need to explain about Lady Charlotte." "There's nothing to explain," Lily replied, returning to her work. "She's exactly the sort of woman you should marry. Beautiful, accomplished, well-bred. Lady Peaton has impeccable taste." "I don't want Lady Charlotte," Arthur said fiercely. "Keep your voice down," Lily hissed, glancing toward the kitchen door. "If someone hears," he said, lowering his voice only slightly, "I don't care. Nothing has changed. Lady Charlotte's presence means nothing. Does it?" Lily finally looked at him, green eyes steady. "Arthur, she's perfect for you. She can give you everything I cannot: social standing, connections, children who will never question their place." "You say that now," she added sadly, "but what about in 5 years? 10 years? When the novelty fades, and the reality hits, that your wife was once a servant? When your children notice her differences, when society excludes her?" "Lily, I've been thinking," she interrupted, her voice firm. "About us, about everything. And I realize I've been selfish. You have a duty to your title, your family name, your legacy. I can't let you throw all of that away for a childhood promise. So," she paused, taking a breath, "maybe we should end this before it goes any further. Before we hurt each other more than we already have." "No," Arthur said immediately, desperation in his voice. "I will not accept that. We agreed to give this a chance. That deal still stands." "That was before Lady Charlotte arrived," Lily said quietly. "Before I realized how impossible this is." "It's not impossible," Arthur insisted. "Difficult, complicated, yes, but not impossible." "Arthur," Lily's voice broke slightly. "Please, don't make this harder than it already is. Let me go. Marry Lady Charlotte. Be happy." "I could never be happy without you," he said, stepping closer. "Please, give me more time. Let me prove this can work." Before she could respond, the soft sound of footsteps in the corridor made them both freeze. Arthur melted into the shadows as a kitchen maid entered. "Lily, cook wants to know if you've finished with the crystal glasses." "Lady Peaton asks for more wine," the girl said. "Almost done," Lily replied, her voice calm. "I'll bring them up in a moment." Once the maid left, Arthur stepped forward again, but Lily shook her head. "You have to go," she said firmly. "Your guests will wonder where you are." "This conversation isn't over," he said. "Yes," she whispered, sadness heavy in her voice. "It is." Arthur returned to the drawing room, the weight of his impossible choice pressing down, his mind racing with thoughts of love, duty, and a promise that refused to fade. Own, in front of the entire household, in front of Lady Peaton, in front of the very society that would recoil at the notion. Gasps echoed through the servants' hall, and a few of the kitchen staff froze mid-motion, unsure how to react. Arthur didn't flinch. He held Lily's gaze, and she, despite the fear in her heart, returned his look with quiet courage. Lady Peaton's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp as a whip. "Do you realize the scandal this will cause? The gossip, the whispers in every drawing room in London? Your name will be sullied." "I am aware," Arthur said evenly. "And I do not care. My name, my title, my position, none of it matters more than what is right, than what I feel. Miss Carter is innocent, and I will not allow her to be punished for someone else's malice." Lily's hands trembled slightly, and Arthur reached out to steady them, letting her feel the certainty in his touch. She had believed, even for a moment, that she might lose him again. That fear vanished in that instant. Lady Peaton, recovering her composure, leaned forward with a calculating smile. Then I suppose you will accept the consequences of this: financial, social, political. Very well, Arthur. But mark my words, the world will not be so forgiving. And the truth is, not everyone in this house will bow to your decision without question. I am prepared, he replied, his voice calm and resolute. If anyone doubts me, let them witness the truth in time. I love her. I will not compromise that for convenience, comfort, or approval. A murmur rippled through the room. The other servants, who had spent their lives watching him as the untouchable duke, now saw a different side of him, a man willing to defy convention, willing to risk everything for love. And in that moment, Arthur knew he had set a new standard, not just for himself, but for the life he and Lily would build together. He stepped closer to Lily, lowering his voice so only she could hear. No one will hurt you while I stand here. This ends now. You are mine, as I am yours. Whatever follows, we face it together. Lily's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of relief and wonder. Arthur, she whispered, barely audible. Yes, he said, taking her hand and letting the world fall away. Always. For the first time in 16 years, Arthur Whittaker felt the weight of his past lift. The Duke, the titles, the expectations, they were still there, but none of it mattered more than the woman before him. And as Lady Peaton's shocked expression bore down on them, Arthur realized something profound. He had chosen love over duty, heart over reputation, and in doing so, he had reclaimed a piece of himself he had thought lost forever. Outside the servants' hall, the snow had begun to fall, dusting the Whittaker estate in silver light. It was a new beginning, for Arthur, for Lily, and for a love that refused to be confined by class, convention, or fear. The house buzzed with anticipation for the coming Christmas festivities, but in the quiet hallways, two hearts had found certainty in the chaos. And nothing, not scandal, not gossip, not society itself, could take that from them. Lady Charlotte's retreat was swift and silent, her delicate frame carrying the weight of disappointment and humiliation as she disappeared down the grand staircase. The echoes of her footsteps faded, leaving only the tense silence between Arthur and Lady Peaton. Lady Peaton, her arms crossed and her sharp eyes narrowed, exhaled slowly, as though weighing whether to continue her lecture or concede defeat. Arthur, she said finally, her voice tight with controlled fury, you have made your choice. But know this, the road you have chosen is not paved with admiration or acceptance. It will be littered with scorn, gossip, and the whispered judgments of your peers. Are you prepared for that? Arthur met her gaze steadily, his jaw firm. I have spent my life molding myself to fit the expectations of others. I have endured society's praise and scorn alike, always playing the part they required. But no title, no estate, no admiration will ever mean as much as the woman I love. I do not intend to live a life dictated by appearances or fear. Lady Peaton's lips pressed into a thin line, her hands twitching slightly as she struggled to reconcile the steadfast determination of the Duke before her with the conventions she had spent decades mastering. And this servant, she said slowly, nodding toward the closed door behind which Lily had been escorted, you truly believe she is your equal? That she can share your life, your responsibilities, your burdens? Arthur's hand instinctively brushed against the empty space where Lily had been, as if drawing strength from her unseen presence. She is stronger than any woman I have ever met. She has survived hardships that would have broken the finest lady in England. She is brave, resourceful, and honorable. More than that, she knows me, Arthur Whittaker, the boy I was before the world demanded I become a duke. She reminds me of who I am, and who I want to be. Lady Peaton shook her head, a mixture of disbelief and exasperation crossing her features. You are blind to the consequences. The society you inhabit will not forgive this. The alliances, the family expectations, the very structure of your position, they are all at stake. And you throw them aside for a scullery maid. Arthur's gaze did not waver. She is no mere scullery maid. She is the woman I choose, and the only woman who has ever truly mattered to me. If society cannot accept that, it is society that is at fault, not my heart. For a long moment, Lady Peaton said nothing, her expression shifting from anger to reluctant respect. Finally, she let out a slow, resigned sigh. Very well, Arthur. If your mind is made up, I will not, cannot, stop you. But remember, the world you challenge will not forgive easily. And you may find that love alone is not enough to shield you from the storms ahead. Arthur inclined his head, a quiet determination in his steel-blue eyes. I am prepared to face whatever comes, so long as I do it with her. And in the quiet aftermath, with Lady Peaton finally withdrawing, Arthur allowed himself the briefest moment of relief. The announcement had been made, the line drawn in the sand. Whatever society might say, whatever opposition might rise, Arthur Whittaker had claimed his heart, and with it, the woman he had searched for across 16 long years. Beyond the heavy curtains of the Whittaker estate, the December wind blew through the gardens, carrying with it the chill of winter, but inside, a fire had been lit, one that no scandal, no convention, and no obstacle could easily extinguish. And somewhere in the blue guest room, Lily sat quietly, unaware that her future, once uncertain, had just been irrevocably entwined with the man who had never stopped believing in her. Magistrate Thornfield's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you are certain of this, Your Grace? That the accusation is without merit?" Arthur stood straighter, the weight of his recent declaration giving him resolve. "Absolutely. Miss Lily Carter is innocent. I will vouch for her honor with my name and title. Whoever planted the bracelet did so to harm her, and, by extension, to interfere in my life." Thornfield studied Arthur for a long moment, his sharp gaze flicking between the Duke and the calm, unwavering expression of the woman beside him. "Very well," he said finally. "I will proceed with an investigation, but given your assurance and the lack of direct evidence, I see no reason to detain her at this time. However, I must caution you, Your Grace, that the matter will still require careful scrutiny." Arthur inclined his head. "Of course, Magistrate. I appreciate your understanding. But make no mistake, Miss Carter's reputation will not be tarnished on my watch." Lily squeezed his hand, the silent reassurance passing between them stronger than any words. "Thank you, Arthur," she whispered, her voice steady but full of emotion. "Thank you, Miss Carter," Arthur murmured, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "For trusting me, for standing with me." Thornfield cleared his throat. "We will begin the inquiry immediately. I will need to speak with any witnesses and examine the scene from which the bracelet was removed." Arthur nodded. "Very well. Harrison, please ensure full access to the servants' quarters and Lady Charlotte's room for the magistrate." As Harrison hurried off to make arrangements, Arthur turned to Lily. "No matter what comes of this, we face it together," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Yes," Lily replied, her eyes shining. "Together." And as they stood side by side in the study, the storm that threatened to engulf their lives outside seemed to fade. For the first time, Arthur felt that love, real, mutual, and courageous, was worth every risk, every scandal, and every battle with a society that might never understand. The first step in proving Lily's innocence had been taken, but Arthur knew this was only the beginning. Whoever had orchestrated this betrayal had underestimated both his determination and the bond between him and Lily. And that miscalculation would soon be their undoing. Thornfield's gaze was steady, unyielding. "Lady Peaton, the evidence and the testimonies are quite clear. Miss Carter was in the scullery the entire morning, with multiple witnesses to verify her location. The bracelet shows no signs of being handled by someone with roughened hands. And you, Lady Peaton, were seen in the servants' quarters prior to the discovery of the bracelet, with no credible explanation for your presence. The simplest conclusion is that the bracelet was placed in Miss Carter's room deliberately." Arthur stepped forward, his hand tightening around Lily's. "She's telling the truth, Magistrate. Lily would never steal. Someone wanted her out of my life, and that someone was here, under my roof." Lady Peaton's face turned red with fury. "How dare you accuse me, Arthur? I am a member of society. A hostess. I would never—" "Lady Peaton," Thornfield interrupted, his voice firm, "you will answer to the law for this if necessary. An accusation without evidence is one thing, deliberate framing of an innocent person is quite another." Arthur ignored her outburst and looked at Lily, whose green eyes were wide with relief and disbelief. "It's over," he said softly. "They tried to take you from me again, but this time, I will not let them succeed." Thornfield addressed the assembled household, his voice carrying authority. "Miss Carter's innocence has been established. Any further attempts to accuse her without evidence will be treated as obstruction and perjury. I suggest we all remember this lesson well." Lady Peaton glared at Arthur, her lips pressed into a thin line, but she knew her position was untenable. Arthur turned to Lily and extended his hand.